Musa, ele ka mabili tun bɛ yan kunu wa? Mu, ele ka mabili. Jɔn, ele, mi, yan kɛ. Tuma jumɛn? Kunu. Aw ni ce, aw danse. Ne tɔgɔ ko Coleman, n'o ye Adama Jalo ye Farafina. Welcome to another episode of Basic Bambara, a project from Ankata, my initiative to create media and resources for speaking and learning Manding. If you're new here, think about subscribing. Thus far in this series, we've covered a ton of different ways to say things about yourself and the people and things in your life. But we haven't explicitly covered any of the words used to ask questions so that you can ask other people about their lives. In this video, I'll cover the following. First, using intonation to form questions. Second, the yes-no question marker, wa. And then finally, the question words for who, what, when, where, how, and then we'll also look at which and how many or how much. Feeling like you need a little extra practice to get everything down? There's a link in the description below or maybe up here where you can get access to a text, audio flashcards, and a quiz for every video in this Basic Bambara series. Otherwise, Ankata! The easiest way to express a yes-no question in Bambara and Manding in general is simply to slightly change your intonation. So let's start with a normal sentence first. Imagine that you had a friend visiting for the day. Once there was time for them to go, you might say to your family, Adama beta, meaning Adama is going, or more literally, Adama goes. Adama beta. On the other hand, if your mom and dad noticed Adama getting his things together and preparing to leave, they might come up to you two and say, Adama beta, meaning the same thing. Adama is going, or Adama goes. Adama beta. This kind of thing can apply to all the other kinds of sentences that we've already learned. So for instance, imagine a qualitative verb construction, something like akakene, meaning is he or she healthy? Akakene. Or we might have a presentative sentence like negesodo, meaning is it a bike? Negesodo. Aiwa, it's time for some examples from Na Baroke. See if you can pick out the rising intonation even if you can't recognize the specific words that people are using.
Well, any atigibi tulun ke nyona. Obe alete.
Ale bebara, maya.
Meniti na lombedo.
While using rising intonation to express a yes-no question is a totally fine and normal way to do it, sometimes it's a little bit tough for foreigners to use because you might not have the best pronunciation to begin with. So if you want to explicitly make sure that something is a question, you can use the word wa. For instance, if we take the same example that we had before about our friend Adama who was visiting, we would say something like Adama betawa, meaning is Adama going? And notice there the wa appears at the end of the sentence. The only work that it does is to signal that it is a question. In English, we do this by switching around the word order. Is Adama going? Instead of saying Adama is going. Adama betawa, we can use wa with any yes or no question. So imagine, for instance, an exchange that you and your friend were having about a politician who was completely insane and constantly was saying utter nonsense on television and on Twitter. In that case, your friend might ask you, Fatodo wa, meaning, is it a crazy person? Fatodo wa. And you might respond, Awo fatodo, meaning, yes, it's a crazy person, meaning, they're totally crazy. Fatodo wa, awo fatodo. Aiwa, it's time for some examples from Na Baroke. See if you can pick out the word wa, signaling that the person is asking a question.
Klon, atene ne kuma na amayele ko wa.
Meni mana ikana firike isi ibindi ka dara dumuni sorowa.
Ale kunafoni kelen le ma foyete wa.
If you want to ask a question that can't be answered with a simple yes or no, then you need to use the formal question words. So words equivalent to who, when, where, etc. Here, I'm going to give you all the equivalents in Bambara in no particular order using some of the grammar that we've already covered in previous episodes. Let's start with the word jong, meaning who, and use an example that we've already seen from a previous episode. For instance, imagine somebody knocks at your door. Ko ko ko. You might call out jondo, meaning literally who it is, or who is it? And then your friend might respond musado, meaning Musa it is, or it's Musa. This first example highlights something important. In Bambara, question words are going to take the place of the word that they replace. So there's no need to switch the word order around like in English where we say, who is it, but respond with, it is Musa. Okay, it's time for a single example from Na Boroke. Next up, we have mu, meaning what? Okay, so imagine that you're out and about with a friend, you get a little tired and you guys decide to stop for some food and refreshment. At the food stand, your friend might say to you, ebe mudu, meaning you eat what? As in, what are you going to have? Ebe mudu. And then you could respond to them and say, mbe kinidu, meaning I eat rice. Mbe kinidu. Okay, it's time for some examples from Na Boroke. These ones aren't all easy, but see if you can pick out the question word mu. Next, we have the question word mi, meaning where. So let's imagine, for instance, that you and a friend were getting ready to go into town. Your friend might look at you and say, Ika negeso be mi, meaning your bike is where? Ika negeso be mi. And then you might respond back to them and say, Abe kenema, meaning it is outside. Abe kenema.
Nele chai wele telephone now, kebi mi.
Ibitami.
Abe bomi kuma be abe fuli abe bomi.
Next up, we have the word di, meaning how. For instance, let's imagine that you were going into town again, but this time your friend's not going. Your friend might ask you, Ibe ta di, meaning you go how, as in, how are you going to go? Ibe ta di. Or your friend might use a common equivalent of di, which is chogo di, which combines the word for manner, chogo, with the word for how, di. Chogo di. So in that variant, they would then say, Ibeta chogo di, meaning again, you go how, as in, how are you going? Or more literally, you go manner how. Ibeta chogo di. You would in either case, of course, answer, Mbeta negesola, meaning, I go on bike. Mbeta negesola.
Madonka nyenenganko na dugo bere fare be chogodi.
Kata fo na akarsa bi fotine bolo mina ke chogoti.
Next we have the word Joli, meaning how much or how many. Joli. For instance, if you were playing soccer with some friends and you were trying to divide up your teams, you might ask one another, Anye mogo joli ye, meaning we are people how many. Anye mogo joli ye. And after counting, your friend might say to you, Anye mogo shegi ye, meaning we are 8 people. Anye mogo shegi ye. Okay, it's time for a single example from Na Boroke. Next we have the word Jumɛn, meaning which. Jumɛn. So for instance, on a hot day, if your friend surprised you by showing up with a bunch of cold beverages, he might say to you, Ebe Jumɛn ta, meaning you take which, as in, which one would you like to have? Ibe Jumɛn ta. And you, of course, are going to respond, Mbe nyamokujita, meaning I take ginger juice. Mbe nyamakujita. Okay, it's time for a single example from Na Boroke. And finally, we've got the expression Tuma Jumɛn, meaning literally which time. And this is the common expression which is used to express the English idea of when. Tuma Jumɛn. So for instance, if you and a friend hadn't been getting along so well recently, but they wanted to make amends, they might come up to you and say something like, Ambe kuma tuma Jumɛn, meaning we talk when, as in when are we going to talk? Ambe kuma tuma Jumɛn. And you, of course, sad that you had lost a friend, might respond back to them and say, Ambe kuma sini, meaning we speak or talk tomorrow. Ambe kuma sini.
Togoni yelemana tuma Jumɛn.
Bo, amena donne.
Ele bolo, ale kera tuma Jumɛn.
Aywa, did you like this video? Do you wish that there were more resources for African languages like Manding on the internet? Me too. Think about becoming a patron, here, maybe, or in the description down below. You can also throw me a tip. Aywa, ni diaraye, kamben, alakanto kene.